What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network as well as on the Global Wrestling Network. Now, I usually wait until this year's installment of a WWE pay-per-view before breaking down last year's installment, but there is no Payback 2018. The pay-per-view has been since discontinued by the company. There is no Payback, there's no Great Balls of Fire, I think No Mercy is no more as well. So I figured, fuck it, I'll just talk about it today. Payback from 2017, a little over a year ago. Now, I am reviewing the pay-per-views out of order a bit. It doesn't matter too much, but I did talk about Backlash, I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago here on the show. I believe 2 weeks ago at this point. And that happened after Payback 2017. So excuse my continuity issues here. But Payback 2017, I thought, was one of the better shows, honestly, that WWE had in 2017. I didn't hate the year of 2017 in WWE by a long shot, but a lot of the pay-per-views really were not that good, especially a lot of the brand exclusive events. So it might not be the worst thing that we're getting rid of them coming out of WrestleMania 34. Backlash 2018 sucked, mind you. But Payback 2017 was not a bad show at all. I was at WrestleMania. I really enjoyed WrestleMania 33. So I'm thinking, okay, how can they top themselves with Payback? And they had a few stars from SmackDown on the show as well, because a lot of these matches were confirmed before the Superstar Shakeup. That was the same issue that this year's installment of Backlash suffered from. But despite that, this turned out to be a very entertaining event, and quite honestly, one of the best brand-exclusive shows Raw ever did. Now, SmackDown had a bunch of them in late 2016, but prior to, around that point, SmackDown was the A show. Raw was not. Raw was having some pretty abysmal events, and I've talked about them here before on the channel. Clash of Champions 2016. What else happened in 2016? Hell in a Cell. I was even at that show, and that was a fucking forgettable-ass show. Roadblock, End of the Line, give me a break. A lot of those shows were fucking terrible. Terrible. Even Fastlane was atrocious. Easily the worst of the bunch for the Raw pay-per-views up to that point. This was the first Raw exclusive show of this brand split that I really enjoyed. So anyway, real quickly on the kickoff show, we had Enzo and Cass beating Gallows and Anderson. Whatever, really not worth going out of your way to check out. The actual opener of the show was for the United States Championship in a rematch from WrestleMania. It was Chris Jericho taking on the then champion Kevin Owens. The WrestleMania match, that was really good. I know we had that whole thing on WWE 365 with Owens and Mr. McMahon, and McMahon saying, oh, that what a terrible match. Not what I was hoping for, and Owens was super, discouraged by that. I enjoyed that match. I enjoyed this match just as much, if not even more. I thought the crowd was more into it, which helps when you have a smaller arena, obviously. But the feud was entertaining. They worked well together. They had great chemistry. And the little attention to detail here I thought was perfect. Now, maybe not the story of their previous encounter, but one little storytelling tidbit from that WrestleMania match was that right before Jericho seemingly won the match at WrestleMania, Owens got his finger on the rope. Literally not even his finger, the one knuckle of his index finger on the rope, which prevented him from losing that match. And ultimately, he would go on to win the United States Championship. Now, on this show, same thing happened. A little different, though. He was in the walls of Jericho. Owens got his finger, his whole finger this time on the bottom rope, breaking the hold in the process. A little later on, Jericho focused in on the arm, the hand of Owens, and Owens' hand was hurting by the end of the matchup. So when Jericho went for the walls of Jericho a second time later on in the match, Owens attempted to reach for the bottom rope, but he couldn't because his hand hurt, and therefore he had to tap out. I loved the little details here. I thought that was perfect. But it was a real enjoyable match. They kicked off the night on a high note. The title change no one saw coming, because the rumor was, oh, Jericho's leaving. Why would he win? Well, Jericho won here. Granted, he did drop the belt back to Owens 2 nights later on SmackDown. But I thought the swerve was cool. I was like, what the fuck? Why'd they do that? The kind of thing. But, they got to keep us guessing. I thought it was a good way to give Jericho one win over Owens, further the feud, and then have Owens take the belt back in grandiose fashion on SmackDown by laying out Jericho and sending him on his way to his Fozzy tour. I thought it was perfect. So I really enjoyed this match. And it did keep the feud alive, if only for another 2 more days. After that, for the Cruiserweight Championship, it was Neville taking on Austin Aries in another rematch from WrestleMania. Now, unlike Jericho and Owens, I thought the WrestleMania rematch was better. This was still a pretty good match, and the crowd was really desperate to see Neville drop the belt to Austin Aries. Aries was a big baby face here. Did not get the same crowd reaction at Extreme Rules. I think people just, I don't know, when you wait too long to put the belt on someone, even if they did put the belt on Aries at Extreme Rules, I don't know if they would have reacted as much as they did, or would have rather, at WrestleMania or on this show. But this was still a pretty good match. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was going great up until the awful finish. So Aries had Neville in the last chancery. So Neville grabs the referee and just tosses him over his shoulder. And that sounds worse than it actually was, but he grabbed the referee by his shirt and threw him a little bit to the right. And that was it. The referee, being the fucking pussy that he is, rang for the bell, and that was it. Neville lost by disqualification and held on to the Cruiserweight Championship in the process. So it kept the feud alive. I thought the finish was dumb as fuck, but the match was good though. For the Raw Tag Team titles, we had the Hardy Boys defending the Raw Tag Team Championship against Cesaro and Sheamus. This was a great match. I really, really enjoyed this. Very hard-hitting, very physical. At one point, Jeff did get his tooth legitimately knocked out of his mouth by Sheamus, unlike an errant knee by accident. So that was a sight to see. Corey Graves pointed it out. Booker and Michael Cole did not really make too much of a note of it. Probably they thought it was a work or Corey Graves was kidding. But no, he legitimately lost a tooth here. And you could see it during the course of the contest where, Hardy's looking in the camera and you see him missing a tooth. So that was pretty gross. But the match itself, I thought, was great. They worked an awesome pace. The crowd was into it. There were two babyface tag teams too. So it's tough to get the crowd into a match like this because they want to see both teams win. But I thought they worked well together. They put together an entertaining encounter. And in the end, the right result is it was what it was, with the Hardy Boys going over, retaining their championships in the process, and remaining the Raw Tag Team Champions. So great match. And not only that, but they kept the feud alive by then having Cesaro and Sheamus go heel afterward. Now, that had been teased for a while. Sheamus and Cesaro both lost singles matches on Raw to Jeff and Matt in the weeks leading up to Payback. So it made sense for them to snap, go heel, and they would go on to win the Raw Tag titles at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view the following month, or in June, whatever. But no, I thought this was a great match. Kept the feud alive, freshened things up with the Cesaro and Sheamus heel turn. People, I think, were hoping, maybe the Hardy Boys go broken or whatever. Obviously would not happen for many more months, at least with Matt. But the match itself was great, and the post-match angle with the Sheamus and Cesaro heel turn was exactly what you would have wanted out of those two. And after that, for the Raw Women's Championship, another really, really good match. Now, I think a lot of people forget that Bayley and Bliss have had good matches in the past. I think it was just their Extreme Rules match a lot of people did not like, myself included. That match was complete shit. And a few of the other matches they would have after that on Raw and in the months that followed were really not that good, but this was a great match. I don't know if it was the atmosphere, with it being Bayley's hometown of San Jose, or what, or the fact that it was a fresh feud, or the fact they had not yet ruined Bayley with that terrible This Is Your Life segment they would do on Raw a few weeks after the fact, after this event. I'm not sure what it was, but they worked well together here. They worked well together here. They had a great match. Alexa Bliss just being the fucking bitch of a heel that she was. Bayley, the ultimate underdog. The crowd was behind her. They just got a great reaction, and it was not slow. It wasn't boring. I don't know, I just really enjoyed the match, and it brought back memories of their series of matches from NXT. I thought they also had a pretty good feud in NXT over the Raw, or not the Raw Women's Championship. At that point, the NXT Women's Championship. So I know they have chemistry. The story just got to be right, and I thought the story was right on this night. And in the end, Alexa Bliss focusing in on the shoulder of Bayley. She threw her into one ring post. Then she would reverse. I think Bayley was pinning her. And then Alexa Bliss reversed that, so Bayley went shoulder first into the other ring post. And then Bayley attempted to roll her up. Alexa Bliss rolled out of that. DDT real quickly for the victory, the 1, 2, 3, and we have a new Raw Women's Champion crowned in Alexa Bliss. So again, a good match, a shocking finish. I did not think they would have Bayley get beat in her hometown, but then again, that's kind of WWE's forte in beating the hometown heroes. But it got good heat. Alexa Bliss was well on her way to becoming the top heel in the Raw Women's division, and really within a matter of a month, she accomplished that by beating Bayley in her hometown to take the Raw Women's Championship, and in the process making history as the only woman up to that point. I mean, Charlotte would go on to do the same thing, I think later on in 2017, but by that point, Alexa Bliss had become the very first woman to hold both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, which is pretty impressive for someone that never held gold in NXT. Was never really a focal point in NXT. Never had a freaking takeover match, So it was a cool moment. Put Bliss in, or rather Bayley in chase mode, And I thought it was a really good match. Probably easily the best match those two would ever have together. Because by this point, or after this point, after Payback, the feud went all downhill going into the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. After that, we had the House of Horrors match between Bray Wyatt and the then WWE Champion Randy Orton. Now, the title was not on the line for whatever reason. I know Bray Wyatt was on Raw, Orton was on SmackDown. They knew Bray was winning, so they didn't want to put the championship on the line. But still, I mean, the guy's got a fucking rematch clause. Just give him the title back. Or even, just don't take the belt off Bray Wyatt in the first place. Orton was nothing more than a transitional champion for Jinder Mahal to beat at Backlash, which I was also not a fan of. But anyway, I'm not even sure why this match was necessary. The feud sucked as it was. The whole Orton-Wyatt dynamic, for the first few months of 2017, I thought was great. And I've talked about this before. I thought Orton being in the Wyatt family was awesome, and they had really good chemistry and being partners. It all went downhill after, Orton burned the Wyatt family compound, or the house that Sister Abigail's remains were in, or whatever the fuck the story was. It was not that good going into WrestleMania. The WrestleMania match sucked, and I'm not really sure why we had to get a rematch at this pay-per-view. So this was not your standard singles match. No one knew what the hell a House of Horrors match was until it happened on this show. So basically, it was WWE's version of Final Deletion, which obviously Broken Matt Hardy and Brother Nero Jeff Hardy would bring to fame and fortune and kind of make famous in TNA the year earlier. Now, by this point, the Hardy Boys were in WWE, and we would go on to get a Final Deletion-esque matchup, or Ultimate Deletion, whatever you want to call it, a year later, which was much better than this. I saw a lot of mixed reviews on this. I really did not mind it, because as a match, it was terrible, because Orton and Wyatt have no chemistry one-on-one. But, the stuff in the house, I mean, as, a See No Evil 3-like match, I thought it was okay. It was something different. The crowd was booing the shit out of the building, because they weren't even in the fucking building. That was the thing. The match took place on either the Wyatt family compound or some random house somewhere. We weren't told where the match took place before they came back to the arena. It was just some random-ass house. So, I mean, with the music and stuff, it felt like a terrible WWE Studios film, but it just did not work within the realm of what WWE likes to go for. It wasn't entertaining. It was interesting to an extent, but it wasn't extremely entertaining by any real stretch. But it was fine. I don't think it was as bad as people were making it out to be, whatever. So Bray Wyatt would lay out Orton in the house. Then he would come back to the arena. Now, I think they explained the rules. I don't remember. I don't really care. But the thing with Bray Wyatt was that he laid out Orton in the house, and then he went back to the arena with no Orton. He took a limo back to the arena, and Rollins and Joe would go on during this before we got the conclusion of the contest. But I'll talk about Wyatt and Orton right now just to get it over with. So Wyatt came out, does his 20-minute long entrance with the lantern and all this other shit. The lights go back on. Orton's right behind him. So if Orton was not behind him, and he was still at the house, then how would have Bray Wyatt won if you had to pin your opponent in the ring? That made absolutely no sense whatsoever. So anyway, they brawl for a few more minutes. No one cares. The crowd is booing. Ultimately, the Singh brothers interfere. Orton fights him off, hits the RKO on Bray Wyatt. Jinder Mahal interferes, smacks Orton over the head with the WWE Championship belt, which he stole on SmackDown shortly beforehand. And then Bray Wyatt hits Orton with the Sister Abigail for the 1-2-3. So Wyatt picks up the win. Doesn't really do him any favors, because the guy just at this point was dead in the water, and no one really cared to see what he would be doing next on Raw. But yeah, Bray Wyatt wins. Does not get the championship back, because the title's not on the line. And I mean, it did further the feud between Jinder and Orton, but just as a match, after a real strong first half of the show, I did not think this was all that good, really at all. Thank God they have not done another one. Now, they did do Ultimate Deletion, like I said a few months ago, a year after this, but it was a lot better than whatever the hell this was supposed to be. Ultimate Deletion was much more entertaining, creative. This was just a waste of time, but Bray Wyatt did win on pay-per-view, so there was that. After that, we had Seth Rollins taking on Samoa Joe. Now, the story here was that Joe took out Rollins inadvertently when Joe arrived on the scene the night after the Rumble, a few months earlier, putting Rollins on the shelf up until WrestleMania. He was only really cleared just in time, no joke, at WrestleMania to face Triple H, beat Triple H on that show, and then Seth set his sights on Samoa Joe come Payback. So the match I thought was good. I don't think it was a great match or as good as it could have been. Now, going into WrestleMania, at WrestleMania, coming out of WrestleMania, the only real story they would tell with Seth Rollins was, can he overcome the knee issues? They would focus on the fucking knee, the knee. It just got so tiresome after a while. And his matches became, again, not boring, but like a lot more mundane than they should have been, considering it's Seth frickin' Rollins. You know what I mean? Rollins and Joe should have had a much better match than they did here. But they didn't, because they had to focus on Rollins' knee like for half the match. So that killed a lot of time. But once they kind of picked up the pace down the stretch, it turned into a real good match. I figured Joe was going over. Even Michael Cole noted that Joe had been undefeated in one-on-one competition since arriving on Raw a few months earlier, but nope, fuck that. Rollins went over in clean fashion. I mean, not decisively. He did roll his shoulders up, which was weird. But Rollins did pick up the victory to maintain momentum. I don't think he would have been damaged or hurt by a loss here, but Rollins did win, and that was the end of the feud. I know Joe would get his win back a little over a month later. I think they were going to have a rematch at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, but then Braun got hurt, and they had the number one contenders match instead. And then Raw just took a fucking spiraled out of control, and it was all about multi-man matches, no real feuds, nothing even really mattered on the show for a long time. But again, as a match, I thought this was good. It was well wrestled. It was solid. Not great. Not as good as it could have been. Bit of a letdown, but still solid. And then we get to the main event. Braun Strowman taking on Roman Reigns. Now, I thought, in retrospect, that this was like a no disqualification match or something. It wasn't. They did use the steel steps. In some situations, that gets you disqualified. In other situations, it doesn't. WWE, obviously, is very inconsistent with their rules, but nonetheless, I thought this was a real good match. It only went about 11, 12 minutes, but they made the most of their time. The show actually got cut short by like 15 minutes. They went off the air at like 10:45, which I will take that over the freaking overtime and like Backlash, when a half-hour overtime last, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and the show sucked. So there's real no need for that. But anyway, as a match, I thought this was great, and this is a prime example of closing out one of your B shows where there's not a world championship on the line on a high note with a feud that means something. Like, you fast forward to a year later at Backlash, which I'll talk about in a year from now when I review Backlash 2018, ahead of Backlash 2019, but Roman Reigns, Samoa Joe, as the main event for that pay-per-view, no one gave a crap going in because there was no real feud there. They were on separate shows. You knew this was the end, so why bother giving a shit about it? You know what I'm saying? And the match even really was not that good. With Braun here, I mean, Joe's over as a heel. So is Braun at this point. But it's like they had a real rivalry built in. And the build-up was great. I thought the build-up was awesome. I mean, obviously, Braun, that was around the time where he put Roman in an ambulance, and he tipped it over. And the guy was just a one-man wrecking crew on Raw. And it was so fun to see. And Roman was so despised, and he would be off Raw for like a few weeks, and returned in time for this pay-per-view. But yeah, this felt like a real main event, despite not going too long. Thought it was a great match. The crowd was into it. They bought into the false finishes. It felt like a real, blood rivalry here, a real blood feud. That there was like a lot of, built-up animosity between the two, and it wasn't just a match for the sake of having a fucking match. And then, on top of it all, the outcome was what it should have been. Braun hit 2 power slams, not consecutively, but Roman kicked out of the first one. Roman battled back. Braun hit another power slam after kicking out of a spear earlier on in the match, and won clean. So it was a big win for Braun Strowman, who, after losing to Roman Reigns at Fastlane a few months earlier, desperately needed a big victory. I mean, Braun would get written off of WWE TV like the next week or whatever because he was hurt, and he would be back in time like by late June, by like 2 months later, a month and a half later, whatever. So he returned shortly thereafter, so it didn't even really matter that he was gone for so long, because it really wasn't that long at all in retrospect. But this was a big victory that he desperately needed that Roman did not. Roman just beat The Undertaker in the main event of WrestleMania. He did not need to beat Braun here, so he didn't, and therefore it was the right result. And he attacked Roman afterwards. He threw the steel steps right into his ribs and started bleeding from the mouth. Roman, that is. That obviously had to have been staged, where with Roman, and I think afterwards, if I'm not mistaken, I think on Talking Smack, I think Roman got the better of Braun by like shoving him into an ambulance or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Maybe not Talking Smack, Raw Talk, whatever the hell they called it. But yeah, that's what we got coming out of the show, I think, on the post show. But what we did see on this show is Braun beating the crap out of Roman Reigns, winning the match, and then attacking him afterwards. Maybe they thought that would build sympathy for Roman. It wouldn't. It didn't. I don't even know why they would think that, because the guy's just not a sympathetic figure whatsoever. But it was a big win for Braun, and that was really all that mattered, and the match itself was also great. So overall, I give the show 2 thumbs up. I thought it was one of the better pay-per-views WWE put together all year, and especially for being a Raw exclusive event, which in the past were really not that good. Again, Roadblock, End of the Line, Hell in the Cell, Clash of Champions, and especially Fastlane were all atrocious. Those were awful, awful, awful shows. So they rebounded in a big way, not only coming off of WrestleMania, but also with the Raw exclusive events, and putting together, I thought, what was a terrific show. You had 2 title changes, so it was a newsworthy night with Jericho winning gold, Alexa Bliss winning gold, a real entertaining main event. Joe and Rollins was well wrestled, a very good Raw Tag Team title match, another very good match between Aries and Neville, and the only real down point, low point, whatever on the show was Bray Wyatt and Orton, that whole House of Horrors mess, whatever the hell that was supposed to be. But beyond that, I thought this was a real good show, and would certainly recommend you check it out on the network in what would turn out to be the final installment in Payback history. And Payback's always been a pretty good show. Payback I know in 2013 it was a great show. 2014, very good. 2015, pretty good. 2016, I thought was decent as well from what I can remember. So Payback has always delivered. The 5th and final installment was also very entertaining. So definitely check it out on the WWE Network at your leisure. So anyway, guys, thank you for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.